Welcome to the fastest stop in town. Today on Masechtas Chagigah Daf Yud Tes, we are going to begin on the very top of Yud Tes Amud Aleph, the very top line, in which the Gemara asks the question, Minat Tamra, how do we know the Chulin lo bo kavana? That when it comes to Chulin, it does not require kavana. So as a reminder, we saw on the end of yesterday's Daf, it says that Hamat bil Yadav, a person who immerses their hands into a mikvah, Nischavin Yadav Taharos, Lo Nischavin Yadav Tameyos. It says that if you have kavana, that you want to be matahir your hands, then it's good. But if it's just for the sake of just washing your hands for the sense of cleanliness, but not to be matahir them, that is not kavana, and therefore your hands will remain tameh. But we saw elsewhere, bein nischavin, bein lo nischavin yadav taharos. Even without kavana, your hands are going to be tahar. So we said, it's not a kasha, kan b'chulin, kan l'maiser. When it comes to chulin, even without kavana, your hands are tahar. When it comes to maiser, you need kavana, and certainly in order to be able to eat truma, to immerse your hands, when you do that, it needs to be with kavana. So again, the question is, how do we actually know this is the din, that when it comes to chulin, it does not require kavana? Not because one of the Mishnah says like this. Gal shenitloish, let's say you have a wave in which is detached from its body of water, uvo or bayim sa. However, in that wave of water up in the air is 40 sa. But nafal adam val kalam tahirin. Interestingly enough, if it lands on a person, that person is tahar. Katani Adam Dumid Kalim. So it mentions not only is the Adam Tahar, but also the Kalim. So why do we compare the two? Ma Kalim Dulom Mechavni. Obviously, it's an inanimate object, it's not going to have kavana. So Af Adam Dulom Mechavin. So therefore, it's a raya that when it comes to an Adam, because this is a matter of chulin, so a person does not need to have kavana, just like Kalim. I'm a my Dilma B'Yashim Etzab Amos Yitlesh Hagal Askinan V'Kalim Dumid Adam. Ma Adam Davar Kavana. Af Kalim Demachavin Lahu. Maybe it's the opposite. Maybe this person actually is waiting for that great wave. Maybe it's like a surfer, and he's waiting for that perfect wave. And he has kavana. When that wave comes, when it hits me, I want to become tahar. So maybe we see you do need kavana. And maybe also when it comes to Kalim, you need to have kavana. So if you mamish are sitting there and you want to have kavana, so then what's the chiddush? Of course you should be tahar. The concern is you may immerse yourself in the torrent of rainwater. Inami nigzer rishain atu kifin, roshan atu kifin. You maybe geyser the lower part atu the kifin, the arch. Like you see a person who's surfing, they're not actually in the water. The wave is arching around them. So that person is not really immersed in the water. So maybe if we allow Russian, so a person may also think he's tahar by kifin. No, the whole chiddush is just coming to tell you that we're not geyser under these circumstances. That a person may think, oh, you can become tahar in this way. No. So what is the whole problem? Rashi says, it needs to be that the memsa are in one place. Skipping a couple more lines. When it comes to megashamim, rainwater, you cannot be matahir through zechila, through its floating. Unless it's considered to be like drawn. Okay. So so what do you mean? Why can't you be toivel in an arch? Sounds like a really nice way to be matahir yourself. So desanya matbilin barashin v'in matbilin bekifin lafish ein matbilin ba'avir. You cannot be toivel in air. Air doesn't purify you. It's the water that purifies you. So therefore, you cannot be toivel ba'avir. El maha. So how do we know that chulin does not require kavana? Mahadit not from that which we learn over here. It says as follows: Peros shenafol emasamayim. So you have fruit that falls into a channel of water. Upashat mishiyadav tameyos. So your hands are tamei, and you went in there to be able to grab those fruits. The nutlan, and you grab them. So yad of taharos. So we say that your hands are pure because you immersed them. Now, what was your kavanah? Your hands were not on your mind. You wanted to maybe grab the fruits. So we don't see over here that you had kavanah in order to be able to be matahar your hands. Nonetheless, they're still tahar. Uperis in b'chiyutan. And the fruits don't fall into the category of b'chiyutan, says Rashi. The be'inan gabi hechsher, when it comes for foods or items to become tummy, there has to be a liquid to be for it to be a machsher, to be able to machsher kabotuma. So yutan dumedechiyite denichle. The Baal has to want the liquid to actually be on the fruit for it to be mikabel hechsher kabotuma. So that's what it's talking about. Now, the imishvil shiaduchu. Let's say the whole purpose is that you wanted to rinse the fruits. So yadav. So yadav taharos meperes harahin b'chiyutan. So in this situation, your das is for them to be washed. Says Rashi, nischaven little peros. You wanted to wash the fruits. So that's b'chiyutan, because as Rashi says, goli daite denichle b'hanefila. You're happy that it fell there. Shal yodeh hadiach yadav. He washed the fruit in this way, so therefore he made his hands tahar in the process. But the point still is that in that case the fruits are b'chiyutan because you wanted them to get wet. Even though they fell, you're happy that they got wet because that's what you wanted. You wanted them to be rinsed off. So therefore that's the raya. That's the raya. Rab Nachman. So he asks the question: a person immerses themselves in order that they should be purified enough to be able to eat chulin, and this is a person who is strict. So we say, however, what we say is his intention was only to eat chulin, asur l'maiser. He's not allowed to eat meiser, even though he was toivel, but his tefillah was with das only to eat chulin, and therefore we say that wasn't enough das when it comes to having to be able to eat anything else. For that matter, what do we see? So he says, Hochsak l'chulin asur meiser, Hochsak in, lo Hochsak lo. We see l'chayra, it's only if you have kavana. Mashma, you do need kavana even by chulin, so it's a kashrus hachemer. Afal pisha Hochsak l'chulin asur meiser. You don't need to have any intention. But even if you do have kavana, but since the kavana is only for chulin, it doesn't help for anything else. But the truth is, even without kavana, you'd be okay as well by chulin. Fine. So Esvei, so we asked another question. Tavol v'huksuk. Let's say a person immersed and had no intention at all. Ki'u tavel. It's like he did nothing. So my love, ki'u tavel klal. L'chayr means he had no kavana, so it's like he did nothing, which is mashma even to eat chulin. So it must be, why not? It must be because chulin does require kavana. Hello. Ki'u tavel meiser. Avol tavel l'chulin. It does work for chulin, even though he had no kavana. So husavar dach kamachile. He thought he was just pushing him off with this pshat. But how do we know this is really the MS? So Nafik, he went out, dach, and he searched the Eshkach, and he found that this was actually pshat, the sanya. Tavavul huksik asal meiser umutul chulin. So we see Mafaris, that's the case. Amar Belezer, Tavavul oila, a person immersed themselves and they already got up and out of the mikvah. Maksakatzim achol mashi yirtze. So it says that he has kavana for anything that he wants. So again, he already was taiva b'oila, so he's maksik for kol mashi yirtze, whatever, literally whatever he wants. Meisvei, for the Gemara, oiduhu ragli achas b'mayim. As long as he still has 1 foot, he's getting up, he still has 1 foot touching the water, so therefore he's wet. He has water on his body, so there's a water connection. Hochsik l'davar, kal maksik atzim l'davar chomer. So if he had kavanah for something which is less, let's say chulin, it could still be maksik l'davar chomer because he at least is still connected to the source. Once he changes his mind and has das or something else. However, ola shovinu maksik. Once he got up, that's it. So ma'ila v'inu maksik klal. Well, it doesn't work at all. Lo. Odehu, while the foot is in the mikveh, afal pisha hoksik machsik. It's telling you that he can change his status. But if he went up, imol hoksik machsik. If he didn't have kavana, then it works for the chulin. However, im hoksik eino machsik. If he had kavana, it's not going to work for anything other than it. So let's look in Rashi. My love enu so machzak atzmo betfil shetov kfar l'chol mashirtzet. My love enu machzak klal. Koloimer bein shehichzak atzmo b'shas tvila b'dever kal bein shelhuchzak atzmo l'klum shuv enu machzak. It doesn't help. Imo huchzak l'shum davar shetavel stam machzak l'chol mashirtzet. Avol im huchzak l'kal enu muchzak l'chomer. So it's interesting. If a person did not have any kavanah at all when he went into the mikvah, so then it works. He can now have kavanah completely. But if he had a particular kavanah, enu machzek l'chomer, then it does not work. So that's the pshat. So again, oidehu, while his foot is in the mikvah, afal pisha hochsek machzek, even though he had a certain kavanah, he can still change that kavanah. But once he gets out, will hochsek machzek. If he had no kavana, so then he could have, okay, this is what I want. But if he had a particular kavana, it doesn't work for anything else. So man tana, who's the tana oidehu regel achas b'mayim? He holds that there's this connection of having your foot in the water, that even though you left the mikvah, you could still change your das, or you could have a different machshava. So Rav Padas, Rabbi Yehuda, he did not. Mikvah which he measured. V'yesh marbayim sa mechuvanais, it has exactly 40 saw in it. V'yardu shnayim. Two people go into the mikvah. V'tovu zeh or zeh. One immerses after the other. So harishon tar v'shenu tameh. The first one entered into memsa. Then when he left wet, which means if it was exactly 40 saw and he first got out of the mikvah, that means that the next person is not immersing himself in 40 saw, it's less than 40 saw. That's why he remains tameh. Rabbi Yehuda says it depends. If the first person has his foot still in the mikvah, even though he already immersed himself and he's wet in his hair or his body, but the fact is that he still has a foot there, and the water could, let's say, be dripping down into the mikvah, let's say. So the second person is also tahor. Why? Why do we say that this is the case? Because there's a concept of good achis b'mayim, which we saw in Masech the Sukkah many times, that the walls can go good achis, good asik, the walls can go up or down. It's the same din when it comes to these waters. We say it's ke'il like it went down. Fine. This whole machlokes regarding this of Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanon, if, as Rashi says, kishahoiset tfiloso b'shvil achas mimayla shel chachamim. Let's say you have again one of these rabbinic tumas can go in oinen and b'chusar kippurim shesrichen tfil lekodesh. In order to be able to eat kodesh, they need to be toivel. They no tami tuma deraisa. These people are not matami deraisa. But he kaimer bihuda demahani le rago sharishon. Nogas b'mayim. When we're talking about only a din derabanan, we'll say the concept of good achas b'mayim, that he says, oh, it's keilu like he was in the mikvah. It's keilu, it works because the whole thing is a din derabanan. So machlokis is b'maylos derabanan. Tumah derabanan. But tumah tahira. When it comes to tumah tahara, the Yibri HaKoil Hasheni Tameh. In that case, everyone holds he's Tameh. V'hainu de Rabbi Padas. This is like the Shitim of Padas. Says Rashi, De'uki le'el ha hoidedu Rabbi Yehuda v'loi kurabanan. Since the whole need of having kavanah of huksik is only a derabanan concept. However, because this is not a concept of huksik, because it's a din deraisa, everyone holds this doesn't work. Actually, machlokas is when it comes to mamish tumah deraisa. The second person is tahor. The Rabbi Padas, since it's not just Rabbi Yehuda, rather it's Dibri HaKoil. Arma'ula. Boy minim Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yehuda. He asked a question. Mahu hatbil. What is the din about immersing machdem asinitis, these small needles? Rashi says shitabin bo zahav, that we sew with it like gold. Ve'asuin kimin mazleg katan. It's like a small fork, very small fork. Barosha shel rishon, and you immerse it. Literally, it's on the head of the first person. So a person is still in the water, and this thing was on the top of a person's head. So do we say good achis islay Yehuda, good osik leislay, no them a good osik nami islay? So we know he said that as long as your foot is in the water, even though it was mem saw, so the second person is also tahar because we said the water goes down. Now this guy has this thing on top of his head. Do we say that the water goes up and it's matahar that also? So amalei, because again it goes against gravity. So amalei tenisu, we learn the answer to this question. Sholish gamomiyos. Banach. Let's say a person has 3 holes in a mountain of sorts. One ha'elyoina hatachtoina vemsiyos. So you have these 3 different ones. You have a top one, a middle, a bottom. Ha'elyoina v'hatachtoina shel esrim saw. The top hole and the bottom one only contains 20 saw. However, hamsiyos, the middle one, which is connecting, so to speak, the top and the bottom one, is shel arboim saw, has the minimum requirement of a good mikvah. So the top and the bottom are only 20 each. But because they're connected in some way, because they're next to this middle guma, this middle hole, maybe that's enough there too. And it says v'chardolia shel geshamim oiveris b'neihem. We have again this same language as we saw over here. This chardolia shel geshamim, like this torrent of rainwater that's pouring down and connecting them. Rabbi Yehuda Omer that Meir Hayu Omer Matmil Be'el Yoina. He says you can immerse in the top one. Why? Because we say this concept that the water doesn't just go down, we also say this concept the water goes up, which answers our question. He said, as we continue in Testament Bays, that it's not that we look at the top one that it's good. I say, no, you can only do the top one, only the bottom one, not the top one. So maybe this is the answer. Samulei, Itanya, Tanya. If we learn it, we learn this. If you look in this top toisus, which we're not going to see the whole thing, the tachtaina v'lo bel yoina mash mahachad the kuntris havichibur. He's saying that they're considered to be connected. So, and we paskin that is only the middle one that actually can be toivel. If you look to the very, very end of this toisus, ketani b'seifim b'toisefta v'chacham mein matbil and el b'msiyos. You can only be toivel in the middle one, which has 40 saw. You cannot be toivel in the middle one. But again, according to this, we see Itanya Tanya, says Rashi, beheaded the Cholkin Tanya v'nelach achareha v'chayizer ani bi. So again, it's possible that what it's telling you is that not only does the water go down, it's possible it can go up. Or, as it says here, v'ani omer v'tachtan v'lo bel yoina. So it's actually a machlokas if it's dafka the top one, the bottom one that works, or even the top. Or as we see, we paskin that none of them. Okay, let's stop here for a second because we're up to 2 dots. Question 13. Ad masai yochel hatoivel. Until when is the person who immerses themselves able l'chavin b'tfilaso, to have the kavana kedei l'hachsik atzmum l'mashi yirtze, that he could prepare himself for anything that he wants to eat. Ha'im rak b'shas tefillah, is it only when he goes into the mikvah? O af biyotza miksasa, even if, let's say, he leaves partially and his foot is in the mikvah. O af ba'ol kulo, maybe if he's completely out of the mikvah entirely, that would also work. So this is the question. So as we saw already, it's like this. Im tavel stam, if, let's say, you immersed yourself just stam, which means you don't have any particular thing in mind, so then yochel hachzik atzmo afil achar she'ala kulo. Even if you've completely left the mikveh, you can still have kavanah because you didn't have any kavanah at all. So therefore, once you completely left the mikveh, we say that whatever your das is, that's what it worked for. Im tabel b'kavanah lakal. Let's say kavanah, I'm only going to do this so I can eat chulin. Brotzel lahachzik l'chamer mimenu, and you want to have das on something else, right? Something which, let's say, kodesh, truma. So it's a machlokas he imrak b'shas tvila o af biyotz miksaso. Maybe you can only have this when you're in the mikvah, or it's like Rabbi Yehuda, even if yotz miksaso. So it's an interesting idea. sometimes having a machshava is worse than having no machshava at all. Having no machshava, so everyone says that even after you've left the mikveh, it's okay. You're still able to have kavanah. And whatever your kavanah is, that's good, and you'll be able to eat that food. Masha'inkin, if you had a kavanah for a particular thing, so it's questionable if you have to actually be having this kavanah or a different kavanah at the time of immersion into the mikveh, or even if you're partially out. But certainly, if you're completely out of the mikveh, in that case, everyone will hold it would not work. TA 8. Le'inyan elu shnei dinim isa b'gemara the adam shiyotzim in a mikveh, someone who left a mikveh, right? Which is again what we were just talking about. V'raglav adayin b'mikveh, and he has a foot in the mikveh. Mahani hamayim she'olav l'chashem me mikveh medin good ochis, that it works begin from the din of good ochis. Le'inyan eza din mahani l'mad yomer good osik. So basically, I want you to write over the entire Gemara, which is TA 8. This is what he wants you to write. Memsa, exactly. So the second person who is toivel also is tahar, as long as the first person still has his foot in the mikvah. Also, if you're toivel l'shem davar kal, like chulin, yochel chavin l'shem chomer. You can have, according to the shita, something else because your foot's still in the mikvah. Le'inyan lahatbil b'roishim machtam sinaitis mahani medin good osik. That it's possible that we'd hold good osik by having one of your not having one foot in the water, but then let's say you have one foot in the water and you have this needle on your head, just like we learned regarding these mountains, which in the middle is a bore of 40 amos and 20 on the top, 20 on the bottom, whether or not you could be toivel in the top and the bottom one as well. That was TA 8, which can basically ask you to cite most of the Gemara. Mahulat bil machtam sinais b'rosh shel roshin good ochis islay Rabbi Yehuda, good osik leislay. So that was the whole question, and also again the din over here as well, whether or not the sheni is tamei or Rabbi Yehuda im ragliv shel rishon noigas b'mayim af sheni tahar. Okay, that was TA 8. Let's see if we have another question over here. Question 7. Actually, we're going to see one more question too. TB 7. Taval v'ola ha'ima dain yochel hasik atzmo b'mailas d'Rabbanan. So, as what we said, it depends on if you had kavana. So, lu hochsek klal machzik l'chomash yirtze. Aval im hochsek l'kal enu machzik l'chomer. Which again is not exactly what we were saying because it's a machlokus. But that's what we were saying here, which was part of really question 13, as we saw before. This is TB7, that if you have no das, then you can have kavana, as it says, for anything. However, if you did have das, then it won't work once you leave the mikvah completely. Maybe if you have your foot in the mikvah still, that would be sufficient. Okay, that was TB7. Let's look at question 14 as well. Mikvah shenimdan v'yeshbo memsa mechavanois v'pli Rabban Yehuda imoyel tvilos sheni b'oid ragli rishon noigas b'mayim. Beis tefil moedim Rabban Yehuda b'dina shel tefil l'sheni. So this is an ikadamri. There's two lashonos. So the first lashon says that when it comes to malas d'Rabbanan, everyone holds that it works. The other sheet is no, that when it comes to tefillah d'oraisa, everyone holds that lo mahani, that it doesn't work. So that was question 14. Let me just write this over here. That's the Ika de Amri. Omer Rav Nachman, Omer Rabba, Morabu, Machlokes is Matumul Tahara. Malas d'Rabbanan, Dimirako, Afasheni Tahara, Pligid of our Padas. Or according to the other shot, that the whole Machlokes is Dafka b'Malos d'Rabbanan, Avo Matumul Tahara, Dimirako, Hasheni Tame. That's Lo Mahani. Okay. That was question 14. Vita, let's continue now. We saw a bunch of questions. I think it's probably going to be mostly all our questions. Let's finish this stuff. 2 dots. So, so this goes back to our Mishnah that says if a person had kavana for and immerse himself in the mikveh for chulin, so it only works for chulin, but not for meiser. He will not be able to eat meiser sheni. For that matter, if he's toivel for meiser sheni, it's only choksa for meiser sheni, but not for truma. If a person is toivel for truma, he's a chazaka for truma, and it's also in kodesh. The Mishnah says if you're toivel for kodesh, then it only works for you to be able to eat kodesh, but not chatos, but to be able to handle the mechatos. Tavel l'chomer muter l'kal, tavel v'luchuksek kilu tavel. So we said when this line of tavel v'luchuksek kilu tavel is when it comes to all the other things. Well, not when it comes to chulin that you do not need kavana. So tavel chulin v'chuksek chulin v'chul. So mani mastisa. Who is this Mishnah like? Rabbanan he. Why? What do the Rabbanan say? Deshani lahu ben chulin l'meiser. The Rabbanan make a distinction between chulin and meiser. Because we said that when it comes to chulin, says Rashi, the pligel had Rameir, b'chol hatoyin bias mayim medivri seifrim. Anyone who needs to be immersed in the mikvah midrabanan, the asirhu b'meiser, they're asir and meiser. So he makes a distinction between chulin and meiser, and that's what we say, that if you have kavanah for chulin, and that it will work for chulin, but it won't be able to eat the meiser sheni. So obviously, because there's a distinction between chulin and meiser. So ema seifa, big diam aretz meneres lepirushim. A person has garments of an ama aretz in which we're concerned maybe his wife was in need, was lied on it, which would be tumas meneres. So it's tuma leporshim for those lepirushim, those people who are makbid that they are even eat chulin but tahira. So bigdi pirushim midros la'oichli truma. Now it says that bigdi pirushim, they're also menace for oichli truma. Now it doesn't mention anything about meiser. So atanu rameir di emerchulin umeiser bahadi adadi ninhu, because again, it for some reason doesn't mention meiser. It jumps straight from chulin to truma. The question is, what happened to meiser sheni? It must be because he holds that chulin and meiser sheni are similar in nature. So therefore, who is that like? That is in accordance to Rameir. So that's a problem. So Reisha Rabbanim V'Sefer Rameir? Yeah, Reisha Rabbanim V'Sefer Rameir. That happens sometimes. You can have a Mishnah in which you have one, even though it's a Stam Mishnah, so you want it to be maybe one person. No, it's okay. The Reisha is like the Rabbanan, who make a distinction between Chulin and Meiser. And the Seifa is Rameir, who doesn't make a distinction, holds the Chulin and Meiser Sheni fall under the same umbrella. Rav Acha Barada, Masti Lo B'Seifa, he says, no. Really, that's not the case. The Mishnah never mentioned chulin, then meiser sheni as the next step. So meiser and chulin, as we said, must be the same thing. Or Rameir, no. So fine. So our Mishnah, very well, you can maybe say, is therefore like the shita of Rameir, that when it comes to meiser and chulin, it's the same. Not necessarily. So maybe the seifa, the schamish mailas. Maybe our Mishnah is talking about the 5 steps, which includes Meiser, and therefore can even be like the Shita of the Rabbanan. What does that mean? So let's look at Rashi. Rashi says as follows: Rabbanan he the Polgula had Rameir. You saw that. So what is the Chamish Mailos? So Rashi says Pirushim ba'oichli Meiser, ba'oichli Truma, ba'oichli Kodesh v'chatos. So really, perhaps our Mishnah, when it comes to the Seifa, is also talking about the elevation going from Chulin to Meiser. So therefore, really is all like the Rabbanan, that there is a distinction by Chulin and like Meiser. Amra Mari Shmamina. What we could actually learn from all this is Chulin Shenasu al Taris HaKodesh Ki Kodesh Damu. That when it comes to a person who views Chulin, that he eats it on the same level, that it should be the same level of purity as Kodesh, that we say it's Kodesh Damu, that it has the same sanctity as Kodesh as well. Says Rashi, Adam Harogel Echel Kodshim, a person who normally eats Kodshim. So Makabelov, sometimes because he wants to be very careful to make sure that his Kodshim remain pure and definitely not Tameh, so he'll accept upon himself Echel Chulin B'Taharas HaKodesh, that he'll even make sure to eat the chulin with the proper intention that it's on the highest sanctity, as though it's actually kodesh. Kadeshi b'nei beso zahirin ubikin b'taharas hakodesh. This way they're experts. So because he treats chulin on the level of taharas hakodesh, we say it actually has the halachic status as kodesh itself. Then how do we see this as we continue on Chaf Amud Aleph? Midiloi katani bahu Maila, because it does not mention this as a mile, says Rashi. Loimer bigdi perushim ha'oichlin chulehen b'taharas chulin medras ha'oichli chulehen b'taharas ha'kodesh. It doesn't say that. Shema mina b'chlal kodeshein. It must be, since there's no extra step, it must be that it falls under the category of kodesh. V'hatanele kodesh. So when it says kodesh, it's talking about even chulin shenasu al taras kodesh. I have a dilma haideloi katani behu ma'ila. Maybe the only reason why it doesn't mention that step is the domu latruma, because otherwise you would maybe say it's comparable to truma. So hatani truma, the domu lechulin, hatani lechulin. In other words, how do we know that we're going to compare it to kodesh? Maybe the fact that it mentions chulin, the fact that it means chulin shenasu al taras kodesh, maybe it's only like chulin, or maybe it's only like the status of truma. Did not chulin shenasu al taras kodesh harihin kechulin. So it's actually a machlokas. One says that it only has the status like chulin. Rabbi Eliezer bar Tzadok omer harihin ketruma. So again, why would you necessarily think that that shows that chulin shenasu al taras kodesh is kekodesh damu? Maybe it's not like that, and the fact that it's not mentioned is not a raya. Elam seifa. Actually, you can derive this out from the seifa. What is that? That he was very strict. His garment, his beged, was medras kodesh, was considered to be a medras to kodesh. Yochanan ben Gudgada oichel al taharas kodesh kol yamav. He used to eat taharas kodesh all his days. V'hoisa mitavchato medras lachatas. They had the level of a chatas. Lachatas in l'kodesh lo. They had the status of a chatas, but not kodesh. The fact is, it must be, it's coming to show that these people who are eating kodesh, that chulin shenasu al taras kodesh has the din of kodesh. We're going to stop there. Let's just look at this Rashi over here. Ditnan kolomer ha'ashachan tanoi de pligim b'achad oimer kechulin b'achad oimer ketruma aval kodesh lo yamrinan. So we say no. We can actually see in the seifa that actually has the din of kodesh. Fine. So the question is, what is really the nafkamina if it's kodesh, ketruma? So we know that when it comes to oichan and mashkin, it can get to the level of a sheni, right? An avatoma can be matama other bekalim. A person who's a rishon latoma can touch food or drink, and now that food and drink is a sheni. But chulin food, which is a sheni, cannot make chulin shlishi, but it could make truma into a shlishi, and it could make kodesh into a revi'ah latoma. So therefore, we want to be able to know this status, so that if it comes in contact, whether or not it has the capacity to become tameh. Okay, we're going to stop there. Let's maybe see another question or two if there is. Chulin shenasu al taras kodesh l'may damu. So what is it comparable to? And we'll just say this is on Chaf Amud Aleph. It's a machlokas. Okay, this is TA9. So it's possible that chulin shenasu al taras kodesh is like chulin. It could be like truma, or it could be like kodesh. TA9. TB8. Harishahaya chamar b'poalav. Okay, we didn't do that yet. Rabbi Gibber's test. He says as follows. Let's see if I can find it. Question 54. Matbilan b'roshin v'ein matbilan b'kifin. You can't be toivel in an arch. Why not? And I wrote, because you can't be toivel in the air. Chulin shenasu al taras kodesh leikloman di armin esmili dahavi kechulin ketruma kekodesh kechatas. And I circle kechatas, which is correct. That's the only one which it does not. We did not say chulin shenasu al taras kodesh can either be like the level of chulin, can be like truma, can be like kodesh.